Welcome, everyone. We are delighted to welcome everyone back to the ARTIVISM initiative, The Power of Art for Social Transformation, which is an initiative begun over a year ago. We're in our third semester of hosting this powerful initiative, The Power of Art for Social Transformation. The three units that have helped to nurture this initiative and make it possible are Adelphi University, Gottesman Library at Teachers College Columbia, and Sing for Hope. We've hosted well over, at this point, 35 events over the past year and a few months. And we continue to go strong, merging out into international artivists and coordinating with different units all over campus and internationally. So I would like to pass the torch to Argy Agilarakis, who is going to introduce our Artivism today.
Hi, welcome everyone. Today we have with us Trebbe Johnson, the author of Radical Joy for Hard Times, Finding Meaning and Making Beauty in Earth's Broken Places, and other books, as well as many articles and essays that explore the human bond with nature. She is also the founder and director of the global community Radical Joy for Hard Times, devoted to finding and making beauty in wounded places. Trebbe speaks 4 languages, had camped alone in the Arctic wilderness, studied classical Indian dance, and worked as an artist model, a street sweeper in an English village, and is an award-winning multimedia producer. She has led contemplative journeys in a clear-cut forest, Ground Zero in New York, the Sahara Desert, and other places. She lives in Ithaca, New York. Welcome, Trebbe.
Thank you, Argy. So I'm really happy to be here. I think Artivism is really amazing. And I'm here to talk about reconnecting with places that we love that have been lost or damaged or are under threat. It's a practice and it's a way of thinking about lost places that anybody can do at any time, no matter where you are. You can do it spontaneously. You can practice weeks in advance. You can do it alone. You can do it with a large group of people. You can do it with a school or a church or a community gathering. It's called Radical Joy for Hard Times, and it's about finding and making beauty in the earth's heart places. These are places that are dear to our hearts. That's why we call it the ground beneath our hearts, because it's more than just being part of our physical environment. It's part of our emotional environment and our heart's environment, our spiritual environment. And it's about reconnecting with places that have given a lot to humans and to animals and birds and plants and trees. And then because of something that's happened to them, whether it's a natural event or a human-made event, they can't do what they used to do anymore. So there's an Australian deep ecologist named Freya Matthews, and she writes, "A loved place holds us, even if it exists only in memory. It causes everything within it, including ourselves, to glow. A loved place is not encompassed by our love. We are encompassed, loved, and breathed into life by it." So I'm going to do my best to get my PowerPoint up, and then I will begin. How do I make this go on full screen? I'd like to know.
If you go to slideshow up on the
All
top.
right, there we go. So this is Radical Joy for Hard Times. And for a long time, when you said that you were attached to a place and you felt bad about something that was happening to it, people might have called you, they might have said you were anthropomorphizing, or that you loved nature more than you loved people. or that you were a tree hugger. It was if you had to figure out a good sort of a excuse to whoops, that's not the one I wanted. I'm lost here. All right, whatever. There we go. You were it was just sort of like not really accepted to say that you love a place. And as the expression on this woman's face says, of course we love our places, because we are, maybe it's a place where we've grown up, or a place that we visited, or a park, or an old building, or a town. But when something happens to it, we ourselves feel badly as well. We are hurt when the places that we love are hurt. And so what do we do when that happens? A lot of the times we feel like we can't face these hurt places. And so we avoid them. It's as if we feel like the place has abandoned us. And so we, in turn, do a most strange thing. We decide that we're going to go and abandon the place. And when I was first starting this organization, I met a woman who told me about a farm where she had grown up in Kansas. And she loved the woods there. They were like her best playground and her friend. And she got married and moved away and had a child, and her parents sold the place. And the new owners cut down those woods. And her parents were so sad and upset by that they would drive miles out of their way in order to avoid going past that house. And that happens to a lot of us. You know, we just feel like we can't handle what's happening anymore. And so we avoid this place. And Radical Joy for Hard Times is dedicated to healing, not nature. We don't pretend that we can heal some of these places, but we do heal the relationship between people and nature. We support people all over the world in going to places that are wounded and opening up to them by sharing their grief and their love of the place, sharing their stories of what this place means to them, and then giving back. We give back to these places that can't give what they used to be able to give. And we give back with very simple acts of beauty and attention. So the way this all came about was I started thinking about these hurt places many years ago and thought, what we need is a tool to confront these places, to deal with them both on site and in our own hearts. And we need a tool that's accessible to everybody, whether you're young or old, no matter where you live, no matter what your ethnicity is, or your race, or your religion, or your politics, something that you can do at any time and in any place. You don't need to be an expert. You don't have to understand exactly what happened to this place from a scientific point of view. You just need to care about it and know that within your heart you feel sad when you confront it. And so we created this tool called Finding and Making Beauty in Hurt Places. And this is a group from Kabul, Afghanistan. And their way of participating in our yearly event, which I'll talk about a little later, was to work in their permaculture garden. So this tool is called Finding and Making Beauty in Hurt Places. And there are 5 suggested steps. The suggested steps are: go alone or with friends to a wounded place, sit a while and share your stories about what the place means to you, get to know the place as it is now, share with others what you discovered, and make a simple gift of beauty for the place. So as I'll discuss, really only the 1st and the 5th are essential. There's lots and lots of room in between for people to do their own kinds of events. And this was a man who took his little granddaughters to a polluted river in Denver, Colorado. The first step, which is really important, is to go alone or with friends to a wounded place. So inviting people together to gather at a place that's hurt is not necessarily everybody's idea of how you want to spend your Saturday or your Friday afternoon or whatever it happens to be. We all the time are hearing people say, well, my friend thought this was a good idea and I thought it was pretty weird, but I care about my friend, so I went. And the reason we recommend going in person rather than meditating on a place or just looking at it from afar is that if you're only thinking about it, you're still in your own mind, you're still in your own consciousness, and you're still avoiding actually being there. Now, of course, if the place is toxic, if you're going to a Superfund site that the EPA is trying to clean up, or a place that's dangerous, you don't want to go there in person, but you can at least go out and gather somewhere in front of the gates or nearby or whatever it is. And that way you go and you actually find out that you can confront these hurt places. And that has a very profound effect on the consciousness. You do this over and over again and something clicks in the brain and it says, oh, I can confront that which I think I don't want to confront, that which I think is going to be beyond me. I can do this. And practically every time when you go to these places, you find out that you might have a few moments of sadness or anger, but in the end, the place starts revealing itself to you. And that's why we recommend, but don't insist on, the second step, which is to share your stories. The bond between people and place begins to strengthen when we actually share our stories about what happened there and how we feel about this place. A lot of people will have memories. They grew up there, or one time a woman said, well, I drive over this river, the Susquehanna River. She said, I drive over it twice a day on my way to and from work, but I never think about it. And we were doing our practice for this Susquehanna River. Everybody has some kind of something to say about this place where you're gathered. Even if you've never been there before, you have a first impression about being there and looking around to see what's damaged. And sharing stories is, in fact, a way for everybody who's present to recognize that they do have a relationship with this place, because they are present right there in the moment. And the third step is get to know the place as it is now. So I'll tell you a little bit about this photo. I was in Portugal for a conference, and I suggested that we could do this practice. And so there was quite a big group, and they knew instantly that they wanted to go to a lake bed that was drying up. You can see how dry it was. And we had to walk quite a ways, and we only had about like an hour and a half to get there and do this and go back again. So people only had a few minutes, like 10 minutes, to get to know the place. And the significance of this is that when you go to a wounded place, whether a clear cut, a dried up lake like this, the site of a hurricane or a tornado, no matter what it is, you walk in and you have a certain impression of what you think it's going to be like. And by inviting everybody to take a few minutes, usually it's more than 10 minutes, which it was in Portugal, you see the place anew. There were people who came back from this exercise noticing how beautiful the cracked mud was and the colors of the earth and the sky. And even with 10 minutes, when you have that focus of, I'm going to let this place speak to me, I'm going to listen, I'm going to absorb what it is in this present moment and what I am in this present moment, without rushing in and saying, I need to fix this. Somebody needs to fix this. And you'll see things growing. You see other people. You see even beauty in what's damaged. And as children, we instantly know how to do this. We know how to let our landscape speak to us, how to absorb us, and how to be absorbed by it. So the next phase is to share what you've discovered. And this is always very interesting. Some people come back from having gone out and explored a place, and they'll say, well, nothing really happened. I didn't really see that much. But that's really impossible, because you are constantly bringing who you are in the moment to this place, which is constantly being it in the moment. And something always happens. So I'll give you a little bit more of an example of that. So before I actually created Radical Joy for Hard Times, and I was still trying to figure out how to do it, I took a bunch of people to a forest that had burned. There were about maybe 10 or 12 people. It was a forest in Virginia, and there were a lot of, there was like 14,000 acres that had burned. And so I suggested that everybody go off and explore for, I think it was an hour. We had plenty of time. And so three of the stories, I'll tell you three of the stories briefly. One woman came and she discovered, she sat down by a little sapling tree that was burned to a crisp, but it still stood, but it was all charred. And the tree reminded her of her sister, who was going through radiation and chemotherapy for cancer. And the tree and the sister kind of came together in this woman's mind, and she sat down and she put her arms around this tree and sang it a lullaby. So that was what happened for her. Somebody else was drawn to a deer, an emaciated buck, and it was making its way through this forest and trying desperately to find something green in all this charred landscape. And the man got really fascinated with the deer. He followed behind it and stayed out of its way, but he was just moved so much by the stubbornness of this deer, this survival instinct to keep moving and to keep looking for food. And then another person came back having painted his face with ash. So three completely different responses to a burned forest. And that happens no matter where you are or no matter what the situation is. And I want to just emphasize here that sometimes the places that people go to are kind of big dramatic places like this in the photograph. Sometimes they're much more local. They're much smaller. Like maybe it's a tree in your own backyard that's gotten infested with insects, or you might do something for a bird species that is nearing extinction. You don't see it at your bird feeder anymore. It can be very, very personal. It doesn't have to be anybody else's idea about what a wounded place is. So the next, I keep skipping ahead. The next and the really the most important aspect of all of this is giving a gift of beauty back to the place. This was a woman in Spain, and she left her home for a couple of weeks to go and do something else. And when she came back, these enormous electricity pylons were spread over the valley where she lived. And, nobody had to ask her permission because the government decided this was necessary. So doing this last practice, making beauty for the place, is really where the radical joy comes from in the name of the work, Radical Joy for Hard Times. So as we consider this place that we've loved and that something's happened to, we might feel an immense kind of surge of gratitude for it, because these are places often that are asked to give more than they can give. They might be asked to hold waste. They might be asked to hold this huge electrical pylon, like in this photograph. And when these things happen, it might be asked to give up its minerals from deep down in the earth, or its water is polluted with waste from an industry. So in these cases, what was beautiful has become unbeautiful. And what was generous, what gave generously, has been taken advantage of. And these places are exploited, and then they can give no more. And yet, still the place remains. Even if it's been completely mowed down and something else put in its place, something remains. The memory remains, the air remains, the grass remains. And so we give back. we who are mourning this place, we give back with a gift of beauty. And what's with the Radical Joy for Hard Times Global Earth Exchange, which is our annual event, we suggest that people make birds. At first, we were kind of vague. We said, just make beauty. But people wanted a little bit of a guidance. And so we said, make a bird, because birds are universal. They're everywhere. And they sing. They sing through the darkest of nights. They're singing in the morning after a city has been bombed. They're symbols of transcendence because they fly. So we suggest making birds, but any kind of beauty is appropriate, and any kind of gift and attention is transformative to people and to place. So here are a few examples of widely divergent rad joy practices. This woman was a scientist in Antarctica, and she's not going to do a ceremony like the woman in the previous photo was. She's not going to do sage for her glacier. She's a scientist, but she participated in our event by doing honor to that glacier, which she sees it retreating farther and farther back from her window. And this next one, this one is a group in Bali, and they made this beautiful bird. They are in a clove forest because Bali has been having so many heavy unseasonal rains that the blossoms fall off the trees and the farmers can't harvest the cloves. So they're really in bad shape. And I keep doing that. So this one is a group in South Africa, and these people were all members of gangs doing a lot of violence, and they spend a lot of time on the wilderness helping each other. And so they were doing their earth exchange for their community. So here's how Rad Joy embraces artivism. This marvelous, this wonderful way of combining art and activism, which I've seen so many videos and just really a fraction of this incredible movement that you've put together over such a short time. And they're all so different and they're all so inspiring. So Radical Joy for Hard Times is collaborative. It's spontaneous. It's made of found objects. You're only the first artist. It's anonymous, and it's not just for people. So here, I'll go through a little bit of these stories. So it's collaborative. This was a very unusual group. They live in Bogota, and they wanted to come together and make something together in honor of their community. And so they made bread. And so typically we think, typically most people think, I guess artivism wouldn't think that way, that artists are solitary geniuses. They work alone. They work at odd hours. Nobody understands them. And yet Radical Joy for Hard Times art is collaborative. And that's really important. Like, we really encourage everybody who comes to one of these events to pitch in, whether you're in a wheelchair, whether you're 2 years old, whether you don't think you're creative at all. Everybody has a hand, and you create this act of beauty together. You share your stories together. It's a way of saying everybody belongs to this place, and this place belongs to everybody. And the process isn't always smooth, but it's always beautiful. And here's the bird that they made out of flour in one of their loaves of bread. And then, of course, they all sat down and they shared the meal together. So another feature of Radical Joy for Hard Times practice is it's spontaneous. It's often spontaneous. It's not always spontaneous, but it often is. So this was a woman who walked past all of these stumps that had been recently cut down. And she started on her way, continuing down the road. But then she said, wait, I'm going to make a gift for these trees that died. And so she made the bird on the stump. And even when you're in a group, you might know in advance that you're going to make the Rad Joy bird. But when you get there, it turns out to be completely different because everybody's participating. And in that photo that I showed you of Portugal earlier, there was a large group, and they made this sort of big, fat, ungainly bird. It looked more like an elephant than a bird. And some people were upset by that. They wanted it to be a nicer looking bird. But we just said, it's everybody's bird. It doesn't have to be perfect. This bird will be at the bottom of this lake when the rains take it. And then it's, and somebody said, well, the bird is so fat, it'll float when the rains come again. So the third aspect of Rad Joy as activism is your gifts are made of found objects. This is one of my very favorite ones. These two women go every year to a park in Baltimore, and they clean it up, and then they make a bird out of the stuff that they find there. And when you make your Rad Joy gift for your place, you don't need to bring in any other supplies. Everything that you need is there. Usually it's things like sticks and stones, leaves, flowers. A lot of times it's trash, like in this bird. And the message is that no matter where you are, no matter what the place is, everything that is needed to make beauty is already there. And this is really quite a wonderful message for us to realize about ourselves as well. That that we can go through therapy and self-improvement courses and read self-help books, and yet we don't ever need to bring in something of somebody else. Everything we need to make beauty within ourselves is already there as human beings, and the earth says the same thing. Everything that we need to make beauty is already there. So these objects that you make to the place, they're like offerings, and they're gifts back to the place. So and another aspect of Radical Joy for Hard Times is as artivism is that the forces of nature, and sometimes people or traffic, they're going to be artists as well. You are not the final artist. We don't sign our names to Radical Joy for Hard Times art. We don't try and pick it up and take it to an art gallery. It belongs to the place. And obviously the waves are going to take this away. Sometimes animals will walk over it. Sometimes the forces of nature starts working on your gift of beauty before you're even done with it. And that's fine. It's because it's the gift, and it truly is the making of the gift. And a lot of times we say that it's the making of something, it's the doing something, it's the journey that's really the point. It's not the finished product. But with the Radical Joy for Hard Times gift for place, it really is the point. It really is the point, because you're not in control of how this is made or what's going to happen to it. So this was a bird that people made in a burnt forest area in South Africa. And the fact that you're not the final artist here can actually be very liberating. Nobody can judge it. Nobody has to say whether it's good or it's not good. And it just crystallizes your relationship to the place. That Rad Joy artivism is also anonymous. I got into that a little bit just a moment ago. It's not about being famous, it's about creating beauty. And we have lots and lots of stories on our website, radicaljoy.org, which you can read about some of these. But every year we get these pictures of these birds on our annual event, and they're so beautiful and they're so distinctive, and each one belongs so fully to the place and to the people who have made it. And it's a gift. It's a gift to the place, and it's that matters. This is a bird that a woman made after Hurricane Sandy in New York, and she put caution tape on it, which was all over the place, and just left it there. It's if somebody comes upon it, which sometimes they do, that's fine. They can add to it. I think they can take parts of it away if they want. This was a group that went to an old African village in South Africa that still parts of it remained. Nobody had lived there for, I think hundreds of years. And they went there to do homage to this to this village. So I'm going to switch off of the screen share at this point. And I'm going to say that there are several advantages to doing these radical joy for hard times acts of beauty. It stimulates creativity. When you don't have to worry about who might judge you, or whether you're prepared enough, or whether you have the right materials. You just are at your place, you see what's there, you haven't a reaction to it. And it's very freeing, because you can make anything out of anything. You really can make anything out of anything. You're in collaboration with other people. So for example, when I live in New York now, but I used to live in Pennsylvania, and was part of an environmental group that was trying to prevent a hazardous waste incinerator from being put in our county. It was, it's a pretty low income county in northeastern Pennsylvania. And we were a group of incredibly diverse people, ranging in many ages. We were all white, because most people in that particular county are white, but many religions, lots of different political points of view. And we all came together at the Susquehanna River one day, and we wove a wreath of flowers for the Susquehanna River, because we all really love that river. And that's the thing that unites people in communities, that no matter what your race or your religion or your gender or your politics, you share a love of place. It's very, very deep. And when you can come together around that, you find that there's something deeper than your differences, and that's your love of this place. You learn to work quickly with this process, because you don't have days. Usually you might have a few minutes to create this work of art. A lot of people are there. People have opinions. People want to do this or that, but you're creating this thing together. And then another benefit of it that is, it's kind of an indirect benefit, but a lot of people find over time that when you get used to making beauty for a hurt place, you find that you can face other kinds of hurt in your life in ways that you didn't think you could do. You can face emotional pain, death, illness, a bad medical diagnosis, the loss of a job. It emboldens you. You find that you can face things you didn't think you can face, and that you can find and make beauty, that you can always find and make beauty no matter what the circumstances. And I think that's what's so important when there is some kind of a tragedy, like a war or a hurricane, or some kind of an event that gets a lot of media headlines. The kinds of stories that we're always wanting to hear are the ones where certain people stepped forward and did something generous or kind, or they stepped outside of their own really bad situation in order to help somebody else. And doing these gifts of beauty for these places, it generates that in us in a very powerful and yet subtle way. And we realize through this that we are empowered to make change. We don't have to wait for somebody else to do it. It seems like making a bird for a tree stump might be a very sort of small and insignificant act. But when you do that, you walk away, you've made something creative in a damaged place. And that has an effect on you. Say, I am not powerless. I can make a transformation in my environment. So it's it has an effect on you above and beyond simply making gifts for hurt places. And you're making gifts for hurt places. So let me see if I can get back to my PowerPoint. There's a couple of other slides I wanted to show you. Yeah, I wanted to end with this. This is a bird that somebody made in Ukraine in 2015. And Ukraine is on the minds of all of us these days. And this picture, when we got it almost 7 years ago, was touching then, and it's especially touching now, because the message that she wrote with it, she said, Ukraine birds have been in a cage too long, and we want them to be free. And And this woman I don't think she's still in Kyiv, actually. I'm one of her Facebook friends, but I just thought it was a particularly poignant image for this. I'll keep looking.
Trebbe,
Yeah.
if we were to create these birds, where could we submit them?
Okay. You could, actually, that's a really good idea. I mean, that's a good question. We have a form on the website. And do you see the bird now?
Yes.
Okay, there it's a bird. We have a form on the website, but you can also just send them to me at Trebbe at radicaljoy.org. Trebbe is how it's spelled. And thank you for that question, because we put that form up when we do our Global Earth Exchange, but it's in the process of being revised right now, so there's no way to do that. But actually, that's a really good idea. It should be up there all the time. And I wanted to talk about the Global Earth Exchange, so I'm going to stop the screen share now. So thank you, Carolina, for pointing out that people weren't seeing that. So June 25th is our 13th Global Earth Exchange. And this was an event that we launched in 2010 as a way of introducing the organization. And we invited people to go to a hurt place that they cared about and find and make beauty for it. And we had people on all 7 continents participating. And it was so well received that we said, okay, this needs to be an annual event. So every year in June, around the time of the solstice, we have this event where people go to wounded places near them and they find and make beauty. And you can get information about that on our website. Again, it's in June 25th of this year. And it doesn't have to be on that date. It can be before, it can be after. As you've seen from the pictures and the stories, I hope it's very, very individual. There's no right way to do it. There's no wrong way to do it, as long as you're giving back a gift to the earth. So I think that's all that I want to say. I do want to add that we have beautiful flags this year as gifts for the first, I think it's probably going to be 40 people who sign up. They're made by Mayan women living in Chiapas, Mexico. And the flags will have the Radical Joy for Hard Times bird in them flying over the globe, but every single one will be different because they're made by different artists, and they use upcycled fabric, which means that it's been given away and they're using it to make beauty with, and so that you can fly your Rad Joy flag in your yard as soon as that becomes available, and you can find out when that's available on our website. So that's my presentation, and I look forward to answering any questions or hearing comments or stories.
Thank you, Trebbe, for being our artivist for today. Before we get to questions or a discussion, I want to let everybody know on Monday, the 21st, we have a speaker presenter from the UK who will present on gender and design. Dr. Melanie Levick-Parkin is the speaker. For more information, if you'd like to present, if you'd like to follow us, you can visit our YouTube channel, ARTIVISM for Shared Humanity, and the same for Facebook. I put it in the chat. There's a small typo there. So any questions, comments? I love the photos. They are amazing. They are so powerful. And I would love to do something like that, as Dr. Lake suggested, to do on campus, maybe around, Earth Day or before Earth Day, to have students just create a bird someplace on campus, off campus, take a photo and submit it.
That'd be great.
Yes, yes. And Cartagena Sonde is here as well. Thank you for joining us today, Cartagena. Any questions?
Yes, hello. Wonderful
Hi.
presentation. Thank you, Trebbe. It was really wonderful to watch your presentation.
Thank you.
I have a question.
Yeah.
I was wondering, I'm always thinking about ways to incorporate all of these wonderful presentations and ideas and initiatives into not only our classroom, but also in our the greater restorative justice movement. And so we've talked a lot about the power of art, not only for social transformation, but for rehabilitation. And RG teaches a course, in fact, that addresses the issue of empowerment through art for those who have been affected by the criminal justice system. And so I'm thinking in terms of ways in which students can get involved working with those who have been touched by the criminal justice system as a way to empower themselves through artistic expression in this way. And I really like the idea that you were that you mentioned, that it's not about getting credit for it. It's not about, your name recognition. It's about collectively doing something, putting it out there, and in that way sharing however you wanted to express yourself with the rest of the community. And that's one of the things that we hope to do, is to invigorate and to get folks to feel as though they're part of something once again after being removed for so long. So I was wondering if you'd had any experiences with different groups that have done this type of work.
In a criminal justice kind of context, you mean?
Either restorative justice or criminal justice, or some healing kind of rehabilitative function of this type of art, public art.
I can't think of it. I can't think of any offhand, but it's a wonderful question. And like I said, one of the things that I found so stunning about artivism is this marriage between art and justice, which is, I've never seen anything like that. But and when you were asking the question, I thought about a video that I saw once of somebody who went into a prison and they worked with the inmates to learn the Thriller. They danced to Michael Jackson's Thriller.
I saw that. Yeah,
it's just amazing.
So
but
good.
But I'm going to think about that question, and if you have any ideas, or if I have any ideas, or if anybody has any ideas, let's share them, because I think it's really important. Because as I said, hurt places create hurt people, and hurt people create hurt places.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yep. Like that idea. Gotta write it down.
What inspired you to begin all this?
Well,
one event?
Yeah, there was actually. I used to, when I lived in New York City for many years, and I used to work freelance for multimedia production companies. And I was very interested in Native American issues. And I did a production about a Native American man named David Powless. He was from the Oneida Nation. And he told me a story about how he had received a grant to recycle steel waste in California. And he was the first Native American to get that grant. And he was under 40, so he was feeling pretty good about himself. And he set out to get samples of this big mountain of steel waste. And he sort of trudged to the top of it with his buckets to get samples. And when he got to the top, he said to this mound of steel waste, "I'm going to conquer you." And so he filled his buckets and he went back down to his car. And when he got back down to his car, he just realized that that's not the way to speak to the earth, no matter what the earth is. And so he said a prayer. He said, "Creator, show me how to be in relationship with this." And he got this insight that the waste was not an enemy to be conquered. It was an orphan that had gotten separated from the circle of life. And his job was to bring it back into the circle of life. And I was very touched by that. It just stayed with me. So we did the video, and I just kept thinking about that. How do you see waste as part of the circle of life? And how might that happen for people who don't have a Native American upbringing or tradition? And how could it be relevant for all? And so that's what Radical Joy for Hard Times came to be. And I'm still in touch with that man. His name's David Powless. And he is just thrilled that comment that he made has had the repercussions, the ripples into the world that it has as a result of what he said. That's how it came to be. And it was a long, long, long search with many different efforts before it resulted into what it actually came to be.
That is such a great story. Thank you.
Thanks for asking.
And as you're mentioning that, Ms. Jensen, I was considering also that it's not only with our outer environments, but also with our everyday practices. For example, the other time we had an artivist talking about the fashion industry, something so everyday as the fashion you wear, right? But how that can be so damaging, not only to animals, environment, and humans, but overall to our communal consciousness, right? So I wanted to bring that and connect it with yours because it's not something that it's just going to the place, but we are making that place and we are to be mindful in our every action because the circle of life that you mentioned and the waste can be so much more thought of in our every action. In other words, what I'm trying to say is that it's not a reaction. We have to be proactive in our way of including what you're giving us today, of being mindful, of being with nature and being in disconnectedness, right?
Yeah.
So, any thoughts about of how we can be more proactive rather than reactive in our everyday ordained experiences?
Well, I think when you're conscious of places on the earth that are hurt or damaged, and recognizing that they're part of all of the earth. They're not separate. They're not something that you can just kind of throw away and they're over and done with. You become conscious of all of the earth and how everything fits. And if you look at a rose bush, for example, that a rose bush in the summertime will have some of the flowers in their little bitty tiny buds. The buds are opening. There'll be really big, beautiful flowers. Some will be wilting. Some will be on the ground. But the rose bush has room for everything. And I think that's the kind of attitude in life that we want to bring, that there is room for everything. And not everything is perfect. Not everything works. There's injustice. There is environmental destruction. There's violence. And yet, how do we see everything on the earth as fitting? And how do we adjust our own behavior so that we can contribute to the betterment? So we can be those roses on the bush that are flowering, rather than whatever the opposite is, because I just said they all belong. So it was a bad analogy, but you know what I mean.
Thank you. Any other questions? Okay, Carolina?
Thank you, Ms. Trebbe, for this wonderful presentation. Let's give her a hands up, everybody. Yes, definitely.
Thank you. Thank
So,
you so much for inviting me. I just want to say that I'm grateful to our shared friend Alyssa Wright for introducing us, and I'm a big fan.
definitely, we are as well. Her work is in philanthropy, and she uses the tools of theater to make it more accessible to all in regards of where we stand in the field. And Ms. Johnson, we always ask our artists, what would be a key takeaway? I know you have mentioned a couple of, action points, a lot of them actually, but if you just had to choose one action point for our audience today for change and transformation, what would that be?
Well, that would be no matter what's going on in life, it's always possible to find and make beauty.
Love it. Yes. Mm-hmm.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, everyone. Hope to see you back here next week. Trebbe, we hope to have you back again, maybe in the fall or next spring. Give us an update. We will try and create these birds and send you, have up some images uploaded.
That'd be great. Thank you.
Yes, yes, it'll be
Thanks so
interesting to see
much.
what they'll do.
And Ms.
Bye-bye.
Johnson, you have a cafe. Would you like to share
Yes,
with us today?
Oh,
The cafe
yeah.
that you have coming on Wednesday?
you're up.
Yeah,
for
we
the
have
event.
a group called Earth Exchange Cafe, and it's live on Facebook. I'm having Facebook wants you to do this protecting thing, and I can't figure it out, so they may shut me off tomorrow. But but we have interviews, hour-long conversations with really, really interesting people. So RG and Carolina were our guests last month. We've had the author Carl Safina, lots of interesting people. And on Wednesday of this week, we have a man named Daniel Four who works with ancestors, who works with helping people to get in touch with the gift of their ancestors. So you can find that on the Radical Joy for Hard Times Facebook page, and we also put it on our on YouTube.
Excellent. Mm-hmm.
Okay, thank you, everyone.
Thank you so much,
Thank
Trebbe.
you.
Thank you.
Thank
Looking
you.
forward.
Bye-bye.
Bye, bye, bye.